Okay, so we're being recorded, and really, this is money for Cheryl because, as we all know, we have a fabulous small group. So, Cheryl, we're starting this recording a bit late because we've been having a really good and important conversation about what's happening for all of us individually. I know, Cheryl, you also said to me that you'd be running late tonight. If you can jump in, you will. And I know you're, working through a number of stuff yourself with work and everything. So watch this recording. I just said to Jackie and Sharella that I'm going to go through the content relatively quickly, but if we need to, we can always set up another session and come back over things or talk more about it. So I'm just going to now put up the PDF of our PowerPoint for tonight, and you can hopefully see the PDF and also see the meeting chat beside me. In the meeting chat, put in if you can't see the PDF, but I'm sure you can. So welcome. Interestingly, we're here at week 7. We've got next week as an online session, and then we're going to have 2 weeks off vacation, but we can again have a session in those 2 weeks if we need to. What we're going to do tonight is what we pretty much always do, but here is something new in the purple. The good thing about this for you guys, for your group, I've already emailed you and asked questions, and you've been fabulous in getting back to me. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, how it works and stuff like that through the night. Progress points, they're pretty much all the same as before. Great work, guys. You've been doing some forums, probably not as many as some of the other groups, but again, we've got 2 weeks coming up so we can work on that. And we have to the end of the semester, which is still another 8 weeks or 7 weeks after the 2 weeks holiday, so that's easy. There is this assessment due on Friday. It's about this essay and project brief, really, about what resource you're going to do, which then pretty much ties into the major sort of project for this subject about resource development, where you do develop a resource, and then the second part of that project about using somebody else's resource and evaluating it. Going to talk a little bit more about what's involved in that, but first of all, the most important thing is for everybody, if you don't think you're going to have it ready by this Friday, that's okay. Send me an email.
Woo-hoo.
Say you want an extension.
Yes.
And we'll definitely work on that. I've already got one email from one person in this group. So we understand this is crazy times, not just today and now or tomorrow, but it's been a crazy time for the last 2 weeks. So if it's like, I'm not meeting that deadline, Kath, send me an email. I'll receive it. I'll send you back and I'll CC it to Sue Lockett saying, I take this, I accept this, we move on. These are different times, that's for sure. So this assessment is basically, it's like a planning assessment. So if you think about the one further down the track, when it is like, hey, I've got to develop it, this one's meant to be like a plan. However, it could be that you do this assessment as a plan, and when you come to do your actual resource, you decide, look, after looking at my plan, I'm thinking, forget it, I'm going to do a totally different resource. So while they are potentially linked, or they could be linked, or they could lead into each other, they don't have to. So don't feel like, oh, if I do this, I'm definitely signing myself up. The resource I will create has to relate to this. It doesn't have to be that way. In fact, in doing the project brief, you might come to the point of realization, and your last line might be, after having done this brief, I realize I'm not doing this resource. It's too much, it's too big, it doesn't meet the needs, it's not, I don't know what my head was at when I started this concept, but now I realize that's not what I want. So again, remember options all the way through. On the flip side, if you do this one and you think, yes, sweet, that was great planning, you may find when you come to do the result, you're already 50% or 25% done because you've done the planning. Again, we can come back and I can talk one-on-one or email or whatever, a bit more detail on that. So next week we'll talk again. So I guess the key thing here is this date. If you don't think you're going to get it done by this Friday, that's okay. Send me an email. Let's extend it out. As you can see, the rest of our assessments are right back in the next month. So we've got heaps of time to catch up and do stuff. So truly, if there's any part of you thinking, oh, it's all too much, it's take a breath. It's not. We've got time and we will use that time. Whether it's to revisit what's involved, to talk one-on-one about what's involved, or just get it submitted. So I'm not even going to pretend to look at that timing because we, like I said before, Cheryl, talking just to you because you might be the only one watching the recording, we spent some time doing really important work going over what's happening in our world and our lives. So I'm going to go through a bit of this content about resource development under topic 6 about developing learner resources. But the reality is the stuff in the learner guide is really well laid out. The information is all there. There's not a lot of stuff really that has to be talked about versus read the learner guide. So we're going to fly through this pretty quickly. The bottom line is that, I'll come back up here, this idea about things to consider within the development process. So there are lots of different kind of considerations when it comes to developing any form of resource. Now we're talking about learner resources, and it's true that everybody is a learner, but again, I know with this group that you guys do a wide range of resources for your teams or for your clients, that yes, they're learner resources, but they're also project resources. And again, in this current environment, I'm sure that, you know, we've all had the experience of going, oh, here was a how-to guide or a cheat sheet or any of that stuff, and we've had to just rejig it for the current environment. So some things that we think about is that whole idea about the content, who's going to write it, who are they going to be, where they're going to come from, what kind of style are they going to write it in, how much detail is required. And in the current environment, that's really critical. It's like I could do the most prettiest referenced kind of 25-page PDF, or do I just need a 1-page, you know, almost down and dirty flowchart cheat sheet? This is what we've got to do. We've got to do this right now and get it out. And there's no right or wrong about that. You do what you have to do according to what it is, why it's needed, how it's going to be used, and who's going to use it, which pretty much covers the next few slides, actually. So there's stuff to think about in the content. There's stuff to think about in the publication. You know, how are we going to be sharing this? Is it going to be a hard printed thing? Is it going to be interactive? Is it going to be online? Does it need input from experts? Does it need to be proofread and fine-tuned? Of course, in a perfect world, that's really important. The reality is that sometimes, and I'm sure you guys have all experienced this as well, this is actually the reality. It's a whole pile of people sitting around a table with lots of post-it notes going, right, we've got to tell people something by the end of this session. Let's pull this all together and get our key stuff, and so we can and get it out. Of course, there is that whole digital considerations, and yes, storyboarding is fabulous and it's great. It's a luxury, to be honest. It's a luxury of time if you've got time to, you know, outline it and sit like this lovely young woman is. I'm sure she's thoroughly enjoying her job at the moment, about going, let me see, I'll put some of this in here and some music in there, this nice image here. Other times we just go, boom, just got to get this text on paper or, you know, on a Word document and PDF it. But broadly speaking, or talking about it in a bigger context, eventually thinking about what kind of devices will the learners be using, and there is a difference in the way we set out stuff if it's going to be mainly read online versus printed and bound versus on a mobile phone. And my key bugbear is I hate it when people write a big report and they put it into columns, knowing that it's a 700-page report. These days, who prints that? I would say no one should be. Think about the trees. It's most likely going to be read online. So don't, in my opinion, don't set it up with the 2 columns, because then you have to scroll down and then scroll back up. Think about how are most of your audience going to be using it, and if it is online, just make it one single column, maybe with a lot of white space to help stop the zooming out of your eyes with too much text in a line. Heaps of ideas or concepts about style guides, and again, this is done really quite well in the learner guide. So sometimes when you develop a resource, you're bound by quite strict rules of a style guide with font sizes and colours and layouts and stuff. Other times it's like, well, in an emergency kind of situation or an urgent situation, it's like pull it together. How important is that stuff? Other times you might be developing something that you want to present and say to your organisation, this is the way I think it should look. All of that kind of topics and concepts come into play when you're thinking about, I'm developing a resource. So I'm not going to call them learner resources so much anymore, although that's the topic of this subject, because basically any kind of resource that you develop is a form of a learner resource. Sometimes it's a little bit more formal in that, no, this is a workbook, a learner workbook. Therefore, it's got particular parameters or criteria it has to meet. But anything we do, we do within the time we can, the skills we've got, the content we need, the audience who'll be using it. And as you guys know, I've said a few times before, I often feel when I'm up sharing these PowerPoints or these PDFs, I know they're not as visually pleasing as they could be. But again, it's that, you do the best you can within all those parameters. And often I'm pulling these together from 5 or 6 other PowerPoints in a short period of time. So it's a luxury sometimes to be just a learner resource designer and being allowed to have, you've got 3 months to develop 4 workbooks. That would be lovely. Most of the time, particularly in the vet sector, for some reason, we find ourselves running behind the 8 ball and having to do the best we can. A little bit of information about storyboarding and a template, which is great. I'll let you read that. And I'm going to ask you, because I've taken out my earphones and my microphone because the rain went away and now it's back. So tell me, would it be clearer, would it be better for you if I put my earphones and microphone back in?
You sound okay.
Fantastic, thank you. I sound okay, that's great. So again, storyboarding, and look, there's a lot of stuff online about storyboarding. We talked about this a few sessions ago. It can be quite elaborate, and if you're doing a massive project or program, that warrants good storyboarding. But storyboarding as a concept can be as easy as a 1-page hard paper piece of paper that you just put your dot points on. I'm going to have something about this, something about that, and something about something else. So if you want to know more about storyboarding separate to the education sector, I think I might have told you this before, but I did, for my own thing, a mini course about digital storytelling, and I did a story about my mum that ended up with a movie with music and stuff behind it, but it started off with quite an intensive storyboarding concept. So if that's something that interests you and you'd like to see that in something different than, you know, the education sector, I'm very happy to share that folder which shows the series of document storyboards that went from the initial to more fleshed out to identifying what's missing to filling in what's missing, and then da-da-da-da, here's the end result. So if that's something of interest to you guys, let me know and I'll share it to you via email and stuff. So, but again, there's lots of stuff on the internet about storyboarding, and in fact, I'm sure many of you are probably all over it. There's organisational considerations, everything from budget to who's going to be involved, you know, and how do we teach the people who are going to be involved what they need to do. There is a big section in the learner guide about copyright. Copyright's quite significant and substantial. You know, there are these things that have got statutory licenses for education. There's issues about for students. Copyright's a little bit different to plagiarism. But again, there's so much stuff out on the internet that is copyright free and or under Creative Commons, getting permissions and exceptions. So when I went through the learner guide, I just thought the information in the learner guide just laid it out really well. And it's a continually moving feast. There is the Australian Copyright Licensing Agency, ACAL. They've got fabulous resources on their website. I probably should have put up that link. But the reality is that, one, we have to be mindful of other people's work and attributing it to them. We also operate many times in a different environment with the education sector. We need to use our organisation's policies and procedures. We need to be aware of it, but it is a bit of a moving feast. So rules change. Stuff that was under copyright before is often released. It's just something we have to be continually aware of and mindful of. And in fact, the forum starter for this week, or week 8 and 9 for that matter, is about the idea of copyright use. So it comes from a point of view of, does your organisation even have a policy on this? Again, remember, overall, to get maximum marks for this subject, you only need to do 5 forum posts. If this interests you, you might want to follow it up. Look, if you've got other things on your plate and it doesn't really, you know, tickle your fancy, then maybe you don't. Maybe you do want to even ask the question to your management, do we even have a policy on copyright? Like, both for protecting our own copyright, our own intellectual property, but also using other people's material, and how do we come around that with copyright? It's an interesting question to think about, to ask people about, you know, to, again, just be another aspect of something that we bear in mind. What's their implications? So, all right, I'm going to really run through this fast because I really do want to have some time to talk to you guys at the end. So you know I sent you that email and I said that the first group have said to me, and I myself have thought, we really should be having some kind of library. And this is not about plagiarism, it's not about cheating, it's not about any of those stuff. It's about having a library where you can go to and go, that's an interesting assessment task or question or whatever. How did other people approach this? How did they look at this? What kinds of things did they do? So thank you to you guys being the, you know, the front runners that you are. Generally really, really receptive, understand completely the idea of just let me know what you're using and how. Bottom line is that this is very much a concept potentially in consideration and development, and I'm gathering information from the 3 groups. So my group last night, they're just starting. So they're the ones who raised it quite verbally. And I'm talking to you guys who are, midway through your stuff, and I'm talking to the next group who are almost at the end. These are some points that I'm thinking about, and I think with timing I'm going to ask you to have a look at this in your own time. So I've started a thing. I started a folder. I've done it on my own OneDrive. I tried to do it on my TAFE New South Wales OneDrive, but they've got so many firewalls. It was hard to be able to get stuff up there for people to be it accessible. This is the head folder name, so almost like the filing cabinet name. It's examples. There's a Word document here that does talk about what's the idea, and it's got the skeleton of a register. And I'm going to put back in my headphones because can you believe it? The crazy rain is coming around and it's going to get more and more intense as I talk.
You're lucky to have the rain, Cat.
So I've plugged in, hang on. I've plugged in my headphones. My microphone is here. Hopefully that sounds a bit clearer, but I may be a bit louder. You might need to turn your volume down so I'm not yelling in your ear. There's a Word document there. And we've used this one for the communication subject that you guys did last term, and that second assessment about a video presentation about work skills. Where we're moving to at the end is eventually for people to be able to check it out. I'm going to be saying to everybody from group 1 through to group 3, email me if you want to offer up any of your current or past assessments. What will it look like? Let's talk about that in a minute. So for the group 1, who particularly drove this, I guess, at this time, I put a thing up there going, look, this was assessment 2. Lots of things change from semester to semester, so I think that it previously was called assessment event 1. These days it's 2 because of the forum and stuff. Nothing will ever be done without people's approval to show and share. So I have just highlighted there were a couple of other topics, but 2 people have had the chance to get back to me and say, I'm happy, Kat, for you to use my videos. So I've downloaded it, put it under this link here, said what it is. I have at the moment just used initials, not people's names, when it was done. Again, remember, this is all a work in progress. Nothing is set in stone about how this is going to look at the end. But group 1 last night was so excited and really impressed and happy about it. Jennifer got back to me today saying that, because she was in our group last semester, saying she's very happy for me to use all of her videos, and she's got a lot because, again, she came into our group last semester from previous years, so I'll be working through them as well. What are the points about how do we make this the most helpful? Thinking about this from 2 points of view, if when you started last semester or term 3, if I had been able to say, here's a library with a whole pile of stuff from past examples and assessments, how would that be the most helpful or useful? And of course, moving forward in the future, for you guys thinking about next semester, when you go to your next 2 subjects, how will that be the most helpful? This is the most important point. Contributors will always have control. I'm not asking, and I never would ask for a blanket, let me go and raid your past assessments and put them up. contributors, and I actually want to encourage this, one, to cut down my workload, two, to give a sense of community ownership. They might go, Kath, I've gone back over my past assessments. I see this one for this subject and this assessment. I've now taken it. I've stripped off my name and my stuff. But I do think this part of this body and this referencing section potentially could be of interest or value to others. So I'm giving you permission to upload this as is there. So eventually I'd like it that you yourself could upload it and go, hi, I'm Jackie. I'm uploading this. I did this in 2019 for this subject, for this assessment. Do with this what you will. Or maybe Jackie's too busy and she says, Kathy, you can use it. But yeah, do it this way. So control is the most important thing. Some points and questions, and I'm really going to run through these fast. So first of all, where should we store this? How should we store and file it? There's a range of options. How are we going to do it? We're going to do it via subject and assessment number, remembering that the assessment numbers do change over time, or broadly speaking, type or topics. Group 1 thought, no, Kath, do the alignment of the assessment number. They'd like to go to the registry, the Word document, and say, I'm doing this subject, I'm doing this assessment number, what do you have for me? Are there any examples there? There's stuff about thinking about how interactive would you like it to be? Would you like to be able to put up a comment, like I said before, using Jackie? Hi, I'm Jackie. This is what I did back then. Maybe Jackie might even say, oh, I watch this now and I think I should have something. And then also for other people to then be able to comment going, you know, hi, thanks for this. I think that was great. You helped me think about this. I now notice I should be holding the camera in a different way, whatever. So both as a contributor and a user. There are many assessments throughout the 6 subjects that are forum-based. So I'm going to have to make a decision about if there's a curated PDF. So I go, or someone goes, you get your forum posts for the assessments, you strip out stuff, you make it a Word doc, you PDF it. Or if it's just as simple as going, here's a link to the access to the past examples in the forum as they were or as they are. I'm mindful it could be confusing. We're back to the beginning. Overall, where should we store them? And then there's this idea moving forward, how should we gather and collate people's thoughts? There's lots of ways to do that, and they're listed there. And obviously, this isn't something that's going to be done the next week. This is a major foundation, ongoing project that will be, in some ways, collaboratively built over time. So there's no rush with this. But one thing, one key question, the next one is, so you may or may not know, but at the moment with our Diploma of Adult Education, for some reason, I'm sure there was a good reason behind it, we have multiple landing pages for the qualifications. So the current group last night, they've got their own one that's basically called, 20 semester 1. You guys have got your own landing page for your own little group. The other group later on tonight, they've got multiple because they've got one landing page that's for a number of them that are still together. Then some other people have got their own individual landing page. Another group of 2 or 3 have got their landing page. I think, and I've always thought since I first came on, I'm not sure what the reason is behind that, but I like the idea at some stage of having a one landing page. Think of it like a university campus lunchroom, canteen. Here's the landing page. Everybody who's currently active has that as their landing page. And I'd like to set up on there some kind of a interactive forum-y thing. So people who have done a subject last year, so a new person can go, hey guys, I'm doing this subject. Anybody who did it last year, would you like to talk to me or help me? Or, you know, or whatever. The other thing with the current environment, as you know, I've sent out lots of emails. I did emails because it was easier than going, because there were so many landing pages, going on landing pages and going, here's some information overall about the Diploma of Adult Education, about TAFE New South Wales. But in this process, I thought, how good would it be if there was one place that I knew all of our active people were there, and I could send out those messages, forum posts that I knew everybody was getting at the same time. That also too would encourage people to be able to communicate with each other. I'd like you guys to build a relationship with the group that I'm seeing after you guys, because they've done a lot of the subjects that you will be doing next semester. So, you know, if you already knew them last year, you could have been building that up. So we're running out of time, and we won't really have a lot of time to talk about this. Next session, we've got next session, which will be our other subject. We'll come back about talking about digital training resources after the break. Next week, we're going to talk about more about identifying training needs. Although, to be honest, there's not a lot of new content there, so I think we'll have just a good time to maybe talk a bit more about this library idea. Boom, here we are. So I do need to get into the other room very quickly. Can I ask you, I'll put it over to you, is there anything that you would like to say at the moment?
Good, thank you, Kat.
I think your one-stop shop sounds like a fantastic idea, mainly because it's good for everybody, including yourself. But yeah, no, I've always struggled to see why there's so many landing spots for people all doing the same subjects or the same course. But yeah, no, I reckon that's great.
Fabulous, thank you. And again, look, if you've got some time, especially if you can't go for a walk yet over the next couple of days, I encourage you to go back either over the recording or more so even just maybe look at the PowerPoint that was emailed out. Think about those 6 questions if you want to, if it's something that interests you. If you've got some firm opinions about stuff, feel free to let me know. But again, I want to really reiterate, ultimately the ownership and the control will always be in every contributor. So nothing will ever be taken or used without your permission and without your agreement, and hopefully we'll be able to set it up in such a way that you will be the one that actually physically offers it up to the overall group. So that's really the aim. I'm going to put this down. I'm going to stop the recording so that, if that's okay with you guys, I'm going to stop the recording so that it has a chance to save. Sorry, I'm not even asking you to say yes. I'm saying I'm stopping the recording. Sorry.